Like,
it's different. Yeah, 8, something like that. We're filming with 4 here, 2 at 6, 7. Yeah, I just wanted it to look good. I want the conversations to be great in the end, but I want it to look good too. Catch people, when they see it, like, well, what is that? And I think that's what initially spurred some interest with people,
Yeah, I don't know. It's great.
But hey, it's been, so last time you were here was May of 19. You were episode 10, and you are now 345.
You've done that many. I meant to look before I got here, and
I'm gluttonous for work, I guess. I don't know.
Gluttonous for your hobby.
It's a hobby, yes, not work. Excuse me. Good correction. My friend, so there's like 4, can you encapsulate 4 years in like...
Yes, I can.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah, let's see. In 2019,
you were with the loom last time.
Yeah. And so that kind of came to a close in October. And it mainly came to a close because my then husband and I were separating. And I was like, how am I going to continue to fund this thing and fund my children?
Sure.
So I shut that down. But, I've been thinking about it so much recently, this idea of like divine timing. And that was like divine timing because I was like closing that down. And then like just a few months later, the pandemic hit. And I was like, it would have never weathered that storm. Not ever. So, and I had to kind of refocus because, I had other businesses and stuff. So I refocused on those. And, part of that was like, consulting and coaching and things of that nature, kind of a holistic approach to that. And then the other thing that I had was I had a business with my estranged spouse that was a franchise of the Dog Stop.
Yeah.
And I actually just closed that down in March.
I was going to ask you that. And you had a pretty good run with that, right?
It was like it was almost 10 years.
Holy smokes. Okay.
Yeah. It was a good experience, but it was, I think, long overdue to just be kind of put to rest. It was a lot of learning and a lot of work. And it's funny when you do things like this, you have like these service industry type businesses, you learn quickly what works for you and what doesn't, right? You're like, oh, I don't want to have to hire people and I don't want to have to deal with clients. And I did all that. And I think we're going to be dealing with the aftermath of the Dog Stop for a while, just because it was around for a long time. And I literally knew last October that I was going to close. And, the corporation was like, hey, maybe we can find a buyer. And that kind of didn't pan out. And then I was like, I got real irritable and agitated in March. And I was like, I was gone for most of February, so it kind of worked out okay. I was traveling and teaching and stuff, and I got back and I was like, I am real itchy. I don't know that I really am enjoying this at all. And so I called Chad and I was like, I'm shutting this shit down. And he was like, whatever you want to do. I was like, I need to. I was like, I don't have anything. I was so depleted. I was like, I don't have anything left to give to this. So I found everybody jobs if they wanted them. And I closed it down. It was a little contentious with the landlords, but...
Yeah, I know that feeling. I do.
Being that you're in real estate too.
Yeah, and also from personal experience in other businesses. Yes, I do. I want to talk to you about the pandemic a little bit because I think you and I exchanged a couple messages during the pandemic. You reached out and asked how I'm doing. I'm like, I guess I'm doing as good as everybody else's because we didn't know what was going on, right?
Yeah.
I just want to get your thoughts not that we want to dwell on the pandemic, it's a negative, but I would be interested to see your thoughts and how you managed through that. as a mom.
Yeah.
And everything
you know
else
what?
that went with it.
Actually, for my family, it was kind of a blessing. Like I had moved out, and then Chad and I were talking, and he was like, I really think that we need to kind of weather this all together in one spot. And I was like, couldn't agree more. So we all were together, and it made it so easy. And, I have 3 younger children, right? I have 3 boys, twins, and then a 7-year-old twins and a 10-year-old. And it was challenging because we were at home all day with them, and I was kind of like managing this like online school platform. And then, we had all the things that we were trying to do with the dog stop, because we were like managing that and managing all the people. And so that made it really challenging. But for us, it was a real blessing because we had to work together, and it really kind of solidified this like beautiful bond with the kids because, we were constantly running in 8,000 directions, and it really, I think in a lot of ways, repurposed our outlook on the time we spend with our kids and how we do it. And I'm a very like when it came to like the schooling piece of it, that was a little bit of a challenge. But like, I also was like, this is a fucking pandemic. Like, who cares? Like what we get done and what we don't get done. Let's just like dump out the Legos every morning and just like build things. And I'll drink my coffee. It was like beautiful. And I will cherish that time like it was a gift. And so I think, again, divine timing or whatever, like serendipity or whatever, I think that was a time that was absolutely necessary. And as challenging as it was for so many things, like the after effects of the pandemic, like, 2021, 2022, I think those were the harder times for us because we were like trying to weather the changes that happened, like, specifically for the dog stop, like people work differently, they travel differently, and we were like a recession-proof business, and that's why we got into it. And it was like all of a sudden we lost 80% of our income streams. And we were like, how are we going to do this? And we also got sued in the middle of COVID by our landlords. It was like a whole thing. I was like, yes, you people are amazing. So that was real pleasant. Chad and I were just like in disbelief most of the time. Like, can you believe these people? Even like the judges were like, what are you doing? Yeah. So, I think net positive, right? There are a lot of things that like I think our children kind of missed out on, like academically, but I think being that we had such an awesome time to be able to bond, I think that was like the greatest gift. So, everything's changed after that, but it also hasn't. Like I see people kind of getting back to their busy norms, and they're starting to burn out more now. And like, I think that, we're all just sort of like trying to figure out like, how do we navigate this now? After having this moment of respite, how do we move forward and maintain our autonomy as humans and enjoy our life instead of just being like, nose to the grindstone all the time, working towards the next thing.
Yes, I would agree with you. And do you feel that as we sit here in 2023 that for the most part it's past us, or do you think the lingering effects we're still dealing with them in a big way?
I think we're still dealing with them in a big way. I think mental health wise, we're dealing with them in a huge way. I think like particularly kids, particularly women, I see a lot of after effects that are just like depression, anxiety, things that didn't exist for these people. There might have been like an underlying like small precursor or something, but like now it's exponentially huge. Like suicide rates are up, and I think we're going to see a lot of that, the lingering effects of that for a long time. I don't know how we right that ship, but I guess we'll see.
I agree. I do believe there's a portion of the population thought that, well, it's just going to be like a light switch. We're going to turn it off and we're going to go through this pandemic. And then when everything's okay to come out again, we're going to flip a switch and everything's going to go back to normal. And then the other half of society is like, wait a second, nothing looks, feels, or is operating as quote unquote normal. And I don't even know what normal is. Yeah. I think that's what we're seeing now.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, and I think that this is a good thing. It sucks being a business owner, but I think it's a really good thing in the long run. Like, people are now getting paid what they're worth. Like, they're getting, maybe not what they're worth even, but like they're getting paid more than they ever have been. And I think that's like a beautiful thing. People are more closer to getting a livable wage.
Yeah.
So I think in that way it's really good. But also, like, if you're not willing to like treat people the way that they need to be treated as a team or as part of your team or your employees, then they're out the door.
Yeah, it was almost like a light bulb went off for, now I'll use the word labor, which I don't mean entirely what we think is the labor unions and things, but I mean labor in terms of everyone that's actually working, right? Even white collar. It was almost that light bulb moment where like, wow, wait a second, I do have options. Even if they're not clear, I feel like I have options. I want to be respected and appreciated, right? Or else I'm going to like see what those options are. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think from a labor force perspective, it makes it challenging. But I think that on the flip side of that, from a human standpoint, like, it's really good. So, I mean, to answer your question in a long, very roundabout way, I mean, I think I do think that it's net positive. It's just, there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be worked through. So
your story, not the nuts and bolts of it, but the view of it's kind of like similar to mine. The pandemic was good for me. I lost
the internet too.
Yeah, the internet's been great for me. But that's been a 20-year slog or 25-year slog. Yeah. But just getting my health together and focusing, I had all this time because I couldn't sell real estate for like 4 months. Right. It wouldn't let us work. So that's okay. So I just figured out the things in my life that were lacking, and I worked hard on that. And I don't think my story is unique. I think a lot of people, probably not enough, but a lot of people use the time productively for themselves. Yeah. If it makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. But I didn't have the struggle that a lot of you had, which was raising young children. My children were older, thank God, because I don't know what I would have done with them running around. So talk to me about that. Teaching, what was teaching and what was like, educating children during the pandemic like? Young children.
I don't remember. No, I mean, honestly,
that's like, a cop out.
I mean, honestly, I don't know that I could ever be a person who actually like homeschooled, but that gave me a glimpse. But that gave me a glimpse of like what it took to kind of keep kids on task and, in front of screens and all of that. And like, up until that point, like our twins had like never really like spent any time on iPads or anything like that. And then it just like shifted, and now it's like I have to set timers and screen timers. Like, you guys got to get off. But because it makes them a little bit crazy. But on the same note, like, I think that parents got a glimpse of like how difficult it is to manage kids, and, managing 3 siblings who are very kinetic beings. They need to move and, they need to be kinesthetic, and you just dealing with that. But I mean, like, the twins were younger, so they were like 4, and so they were, a little more like open to doing whatever. Like, we do like a lot of art projects. We made a lot of like cardboard boxes because I mean, I ordered more shit on Amazon than ever. You're not alone. I know. I'm like, well, whatever. So yeah, I mean, we built a lot of stuff and did a lot of like reading and things like that. We didn't even watch that many movies, but I did buy a projector, and that was probably the single greatest thing I bought because we would watch movies outside.
Oh, right on.
Which was like kind of fun, you know?
Yeah.
We still do that actually.
Yeah. See? There's a carryover.
There's holdovers.
Yeah, there's a carryover.
So yeah, I think, you know, we did the best we could. And there were parents like in their class, they go to a private school, and there were parents who were freaking out. And I was just like, what are you freaking out about? I mean, like there's other stuff to freak out about. Not this, not the education piece. Like, you just do what you can. Yeah. And like, I basically was like, okay, guys, like, I just need you to be on task for the primary subjects, which is like language arts, math, and what was the other one? They're in a private Jewish school, so it was like they had Hebrew. I was like, be on for Hebrew, just for a minute. Just do me a favor. Just that.
Kind of like required.
Yeah, it's required for this. But you know, like for the most part, you know, it was just like experiential. Again, like every day, I basically like threw out a king size like a quilt and was like, let's just build Legos. We built like houses and. You know, that was
so
really fun.
it sounds like you made the circumstance fun for the kids.
I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, we weren't necessarily...
get drunk and watch Tiger King, right?
Yeah, well...
That's what the got to society did.
It's true. Yeah. No, I didn't do that. But it was like, it was good. I spent a lot of time reading myself, and I just really enjoyed that.
It was almost like it was
like a vacation.
No, I remember going through it going, wow, I'm like the weight's falling off. I'm exercising. I'm out in the sun. I don't have to work. There's some kind of money coming in. I mean, this isn't a bad gig.
Yeah, no. Like socialist society. I'm like,
right. I mean, this is what socialism is. I always was against it. That's not a bad gig. Yeah, I did. Yeah, it gave you a little taste of what like the other half of the world is. But talk to me about what you're doing now. Like, talk to me about. I mean, you're doing a lot. It sounds like here from everything that I can see. But what's your focus right now for you?
So you know, it's
you
sort
always
of
have
funny.
so many umbrellas in the.
Yeah, I do. I mean, like-minded people flock together, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think so.
So a lot of what I've been focused on in the last year has been kind of under two umbrellas. Like I've been working a lot with women who are going through some transition, whether it's like divorce or empty nesting or, you know, whatever it is that they're doing. And so, you know, so I've been working in that sort of realm, you know, as I've been kind of coining myself mindfulness or mindful empowerment mentor. So just kind of like teaching people basic mindfulness skills to breathe and be present and kind of feel the senses in their bodies so they can know whether they're making a right decision or a decision that actually isn't in alignment with themselves. So I've been doing a lot of that work. And then on the other hand, I've been doing a lot of work with, and it's actually not all that different, but I've been doing a lot of work like in the Jewish community, doing some, you know, teaching mindfulness and that sort of stuff with like a Jewish lens to it. But like my primary stuff is like working with women. So, I mean, I work with anybody, but I really focus on women. So I like to try to like help women build themselves back up, and like the things that
working with broken self-esteem and things.
See, well, it's not even necessarily broken self-esteem. A lot of times, I think a lot of times as women, especially as like women who are mothers, or you know, we tend to have to manage the house, and we have to tend to our children, and we have to tend to the life that we are trying to have, next to as synchronous, like we're like synchronized swimming, right? Like we're like, and we got all these little hats, we're all doing the same thing. So I feel like a lot of what I'm seeing is just, like people who are in relationships that trigger their insecurities and trigger their things in them that they need to work on to kind of heal, to live their best life. Okay. And I mean, I think my ultimate goal really for anybody that I have been working with is really to help them find some semblance of inner peace and joy. I think that so many of us need that, not even just as women, but men too. I think we need to find the internal locus of happiness and validation. And, it's kind of like what we were talking about before we got on the mics, but like, if you do something and it really resonates with you and you're really happy to be doing it, then, everything sort of falls into line. Whenever you're kind of working against the stream, so to speak, it doesn't fall into line and you run into lots of obstacles and stuff. And I think it's not only the vibe that you're giving out, but it's the vibe that you're getting back too. So
why do you think it's so difficult for us at times to be self-aware or to do any serious self-reflection?
Because we're taught not to. We're taught from a very early age not to be intuitive, not to feel our intuition and to move with it.
Help me understand that.
Okay, here's a fine example. So this is a really stupid but poignant example. So like when you have smaller children and you're somewhere and, you're like saying goodbye to like friends or something. Okay. And you say to your kids, oh, go ahead over and hug those people. Give them a hug, say goodbye, tell them you love them. Right. And like
every
literally
family
it's like,
gathering I ever did.
And I mean, I've certainly been at fault too, but like, we're teaching our kids, like, if our kids don't want to do that, then they should go with that. You know, they shouldn't have to do that. And it's not, we're taught courtesy and respect, and we're taught to have etiquette in some ways. And I don't mean that necessarily in a proper etiquette way, but we're taught to ignore ourselves. We're taught to ignore how we're truly feeling and to take the opinions of everybody around us as being more important than our own. And boy, whenever you're in the midst of a huge transition, it really rears its ugly head because you are like, oh shit, like what is my true north? What makes me happy? And I think like as we get older, not everybody, but for a few of us, like as you get older, you just don't give a shit. You're like, okay, well, I mean, I don't really care what you think about me.
It takes a while to get there sometimes for some of us, right?
And some people never get there.
Yeah.
And so like I feel, and I like, and for me, like I've been, oh, Eric, like, let's talk about deep stuff.
So you knew where we were going, right? I mean, come on now, you knew where we were going.
I just have, I just personally think that if you're taught as a young child not to honor yourself and your goals, like those parents who are like, no, you're not doing that for college. No, you're not going to be working in that industry. Like nobody knows you better than you.
Right.
And if you're listening to everybody around you, then boy, it really makes it challenging to like shed that, because you basically are giving your power away to other people. And then how do you know what's right for you? You don't. Like you end up doing everything everybody else wants you to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have certainly made mistakes, business mistakes too, where I've been like, oh yeah, you want to do it? Let's do that. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm into it. And then like somewhere along the line, I get that like, this is probably not the right thing in this moment, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to muscle through. And, you wear these masks and these identities, and they're not really who you truly are. And I think, if I can shed any light for anybody into their own, almost okay, let's cut off the top and look into your mind. That is my hope. My hope is that I can help people be able to find that, because it's hard and it's a challenging journey and it sucks. But if you have somebody who can kind of give you some tools or give you a framework, I think that it works so much better. I mean, I come from a neuroscience psychology background. That's pretty much where I've spent most of my life in those fields. So,
okay. So would you agree that now more than ever, probably in 2023, it appears, at least from my limited viewpoint, that identities are the big thing, and showing our identity and wearing our identities as a badge of honor. And I'm not saying it's always bad or good. I'm just saying it seems like it's real prevalent to do that today. It's almost like I got to have the right shirt, the right affiliation, the right button, the right words. I have to have the right thing so my people will know I'm with them. And it's so foreign to the way I live.
But that's not internal. That's external. That's still external validation. And I do think that there is something about, I love individuals who are loud and proud. I love that for them. But I personally think that for me, maybe this resonates with other people too, but for me, I'd rather be quiet and confident. I'd rather be okay, here I am. I'm showing up, and you can feel my energy, and you know what I'm about. You know where I'm clear.
It's almost unspoken.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, but I can set boundaries, and I can kind of do all of these things to kind of protect my energy. And there was certainly a time in my life where I didn't do that, and I feel like in those particular times, you just get beaten down. And again, for me, I think there's more power to letting go the story. I, again, love people who are proclaiming their identity. And I think it's important. I do think there is a little bit of immaturity to that too. It's something you do when you're a teenager. And again, to each their own. I'm not judging, but I do think that, for me, I've been really working on the mantra of I am, and that's it. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not doing this. And I think, kind of getting back to our conversation earlier where we were talking about being people of Renaissance people, right? Wearing many hats, doing many things, there's no reason for us to proclaim, I'm a podcaster.
That's an identity.
I'm a real estate agent.
Yes.
I'm a mindfulness coach for women. I'm this. I mean, you have to do it. Does society
demand that from us, though?
You have to do it to a certain degree if you need to market yourself, which I fucking hate.
Oh, God.
I hate it.
Not as much as I do, friend.
But the thing is that and especially because it now marketing is very icky and it feels a little not
good.
Not
so I'm
good.
glad I'm not the one that feels that way.
No, you're not. You're in good company. But I think just shedding our stories is so important. The thing about that is just kind of working in that mantra of I am. Is it, you shed the story of I'm a mother. I'm somebody who's formerly married. I was an academic. I get to shed that, and it gives such freedom, It's such freedom. So I get to do whatever I want, whenever I want.
So how do you, for lack of a better phrase, how do you teach that to someone who's really struggling with the ability to set those labels free in their life? and just like you said, place themselves out there. I am.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think that's something that comes overnight, and I think it's ever evolving, right? Like I think we're wired to have a story and to like relive those stories for good or bad, right? Like like former lives, like, oh, we did this thing and it was so awesome, or like, oh, this thing happened and it was like the worst thing ever. And actually, there's science that shows us that when we relive these experiences, our body reacts as if it's like the event rehappening, right? So it perpetuates a cycle of anxiety or depression, or anxiety and depression from experiencing the lapse of joy from 100%. The joyful experience. So that doesn't really answer your question. I think it's different for everybody. Like, you really have to, I don't know if I said this in, episode 10.
I got most of it in my brain, so go ahead. I'll let you know.
You're like, I just listened to it 5 minutes ago.
Yesterday, by chance, yes.
I did not. So I don't know what I said. I should have. I should have to prepare.
It was 4 years ago last month,
Yeah. So, part of like what makes me who I am is that I can see people. Like, I can like look at a person and I can see who they are. I can see the mask. I can see the insecurity. I can see all the shit. And that's been like a thing that I've had since I was a little. It was like a parlor trick as a kid. Like, I'd go to Sandcastle and be like, oh, that girl's boyfriend just broke up with her, whatever, and so
that's great at parties, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like, why? So, but the thing is that allows me to navigate a conversation with somebody so that
certainly
they can kind of come to their own realization. Because like, I'm not the person who's like doing the healing, although I'm working on that myself always, but I'm helping a person to try to like do that. So, having that like superpower, for lack of a better term, is really good. And, the other thing is that like knowing where to kind of like meet them and kind of like massage things a little bit so that they can, hear it a little differently. I don't know why, but this is like, I always get metaphors. So it'll be like, oh yeah, like you're steering the ship, and it's like it meets the person where they are. Like, I have a friend who's like an avid jujitsu practitioner, and he was going through something, and I remember I was like, and I don't even know where this stuff comes from. It just like comes through me. I'm just like, okay, so it's a little bit like when you have somebody in a submission hold. He was like, what? I'm like, yeah. So it's like, you're so good at that. Just like
meeting people where they are. Isn't that like the problem with most, how do I say this? That's almost the initial problem with, I think, a lot of therapy in general, is they're not starting at the point where it's, you're not meeting the client halfway, right?
Well, I would maybe argue, that like individuals who are in therapy are sometimes they're looking for a quick fix. They're not actually looking to do the work. So whereas if you do like the coaching, and I can take no credit for this. This is actually words from my therapist. So, and I agree, it's, if somebody's looking for somebody to guide them or be a mentor or a coach or whatever, usually they're ready to do the work.
So, okay.
So if you're in
difference
therapy,
between coaching and therapy.
Right.
Okay. What's the difference of coaching and therapy?
I think that's it. I think it's like, it's not that everybody wants a quick fix. I wouldn't say that necessarily, but I would say that there are a lot of people who are in therapy who don't know how to do the work or aren't ready to do the work, but they're there to like talk through it, and maybe at some point it'll gain some traction.
Is there a difference between being told what to do in their minds, being told what to do to fix themselves, or being shown a path for self-fixing? I don't know.
I mean, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not really 100% sure. I think there's a lot to be said for therapy, and there's like a multitude of therapies out there, right? Like cognitive behavioral therapy, and then you can do this like EMDR, this like rapid eye movement stuff, and then you've got like this other stuff. There's so many. There's like a broad array of therapeutic techniques, and sometimes people find one and it's not actually the right fit, but they do it anyhow because they think that that's what it is. And meanwhile, there's like, you just kind of have to educate yourself about it and see what really works. And with coaching, I feel like everybody is a coach, and I hate the term, but whenever you're somebody's cheerleader, you're like, okay, I see where you are. Let me ask you some questions to see where we need to kind of figure out where the work is. And that's similar to therapy, but it's a little more directed, a little more guided, I think.
It sounds like the person seeking coaching has a little more desire to have a pathway shown to them where they can be more hands-on with getting the result. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you learn pretty quickly who wants to do the work and who doesn't. I personally assign homework. I'm like, here, this is what I want you to do. And it's up to you to do it. I'm not your babysitter. Right. So you're going to do it or you're not. And, and if it doesn't resonate with you, I expect and demand that you'll tell me. Right. And we'll find something that does work for you. And maybe that's just, maybe I'm giving you exposure to something that will come down the line. So, what's your thoughts on the concept of motivation?
Well, it's not the same for everybody. And, like there are lots of different things that motivate different people, right? Like some people are really money motivated, and that's pretty great. Some people are really internally motivated, right? So, I think some people need that like commanding force, like boot camp feeling, like drill sergeant. And some people need a little softness and just a little, it just depends. So is
that the job of the coach to figure that out, maybe?
Maybe a little bit. I'm pretty good at just inspiring people to kind of move into action. I have a pretty good track record with that. So, but yeah, I'm not sure. And I'm sure it's probably done differently by different people, right? I'm sure that there are people who are like,
if you're in the Army, it's definitely different than
right.
Motivation you're going to do it.
And I guess this is sort of exemplified, like the idea of motivation is sort of exemplified by the array of self-help books that are out there, right?
Yes.
Like you've got that Goggins guy who's
David's nuts.
Yeah, he's nuts. Wild, but like he really has motivated so many people.
He has.
And along that same line, then you've got like, people who are like doing all the journeying and plant medicine stuff, which is like great for them, but not really my bag. And then you've got like, these other people who are kind of motivated by like, just by resting and sort of resting into things. And, it's really interesting.
It's kind of specific, right? It's such individually specific almost.
Yeah. But it's also like, it's like speaking a language that works for you. Right. So like, I think about this a lot whenever I think about spiritual practices, just in general, like, I'm an avid yoga practitioner. I study Vedic scriptures. Like I'm pretty versed in that. I'm a Kriya Yoga initiate. Like, I spend a lot of time like listening to the Mahabharata and things like that, right? And two, I also spend a lot of time studying like Jewish mysticism and those texts. And, I spend an exorbitant amount of time learning like Tanya, which is a very specific type of Judaism, and it's a very specific book that is written to help Jews make their Judaism like more practical. So I spend a lot of time in spiritual exploration. And that's actually like if I could spend all of my time just doing that, I would probably
That's
never,
where you'd be, huh?
I would never leave my house. I'd be meditating. I'd be doing yoga. I'd be like
She'd be like a monk.
I'd be hanging out with, I'm pretty sure I probably was in a past
She
life.
was the Jewish monk over here.
Maybe I was a rabbi.
Could be.
Yeah, but anyway, so like I spend a lot of time thinking about that, and I can't remember what we were talking about. Spiritual conquest.
Yeah, I think we're talking about motivation.
Yeah.
I think in the essence of it.
Yeah, but there was something there. There was a real nugget. Well, whatever.
It'll come back to you.
I'm sure. And if not, it wasn't meant to be said. But anyway, so I enjoy these things. And I think what I was saying was that, like, you know, this language of like the Vedas is very specific to a particular group of people. And this like Hebrew language over here, this is very specific to a certain group of people. And there are so many similarities and so much overlap, right? And in that, I can say that, like, you know, when I'm speaking to people if I were teaching a yoga class or teaching a meditation class, like I would be saying certain things in a certain way. And when I'm over here, I'm saying things in a different way. And they are very specific to those groups, right? And so I think just kind of like, you know, piggybacking onto this, like, oh, there's an array of self-help books out there. There's an array of gurus. There's an array of, you know, clergy. There's an array of, like, you know, self-help people who are out there doing the thing and speaking the language that speaks to each person, right?
Okay.
And so, like, I do think it's important to, like, meet the people where they are. I think that's the bottom line.
I think you're right. I would agree with you there. Let me ask you about okay, so we were together 4 years ago, and I would venture to say that the platform Instagram has changed so quickly and so fast that it probably looks a lot different today than it did 2019.
Yeah.
Meaning that the amount of inputs being thrown at Instagram users, especially our young, is coming at a pace that's just really crazy. I think years ago, it was like every 7th or 8th slide, there was an ad. And now it's every 3rd. So depending on the algorithm, you could be getting inundated with self-help guru. I mean, the amount of inputs is unbelievable.
The amount of stuff that comes up in my feed. I have to go through and like once every little while and just start deleting people. And it's not that I don't want to follow them. It's just that, like, whatever is coming with them, I'm just like, I just don't want to see it. Like, I got enough. I love looking at things on Instagram. I could do it for hours. Eric, I'm so old. I'm like, I don't understand this Snapchat, TikTok stuff.
I don't have those either.
Yeah.
I can't take any more inputs.
Yeah.
My brain just doesn't.
Yeah. I like Instagram because it's like, it funnels everything right into one spot. I'm like, okay, I can dig this.
But for, I think, our younger people starting out in the world, they're getting a lot of inputs.
Yep.
And when it comes to self-help folks or self-help material, there's a lot of stuff. I won't say crap. There's a lot of stuff, a variety of stuff being thrown at them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think everybody, right? You know, I was at dinner with a friend a couple of months ago, and she said something to me like, I just can't therapize anymore. Like, I'm just done, you know? Like, it's like everything that comes at me is just like, I'm like, give me all of that. she was like, I don't want any of it. I'm like, yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but you can disseminate it. You know? I mean, first off, you like it, but you can disseminate it and take what you want and push aside that you don't. Not everybody has that skill.
But the other piece of it too is that, like, in relation to that, there's just, it's not just that there's so much of it. It's just that, like, it's like everybody's an expert. And it's great, right? It's great because everybody's been an expert all along, but now people have a platform for it, right? And so, I mean, I don't.
Do we?
I don't know.
I mean, we have a marketing platform for some of these folks, right? Because there seems to be a money component to so much of what we're being what we are ingesting.
So,
and I'm not anti-capitalist, but I just don't understand why. I question the veracity of the content when it's tainted as a sales pitch.
Agreed. I was just talking with somebody. Oh, this is I was going through a really challenging moment. And I reached out to somebody and they were like, well, it looks like you're doing fine on the social medias.
The other reality.
I literally was like, what? Like, me in real life. Like,
What does that even mean anymore?
Well, I don't know.
Is this look,
like,
physical world we're in, right?
Yeah.
I have to do this to remind people this is like the real world because the virtual is so powerful now.
Well, but also I don't really even think of that as being a world. Right.
Agreed. Thank you.
Like I think of that as that's a platform.
It's a thing.
It's not really real.
That's how I feel about it. We are in the minority.
Well, but we are
in the minority.
Are we?
I think so. Yes.
I don't know. I mean, all I know is what I put out there and what I present doesn't always necessarily meet me where I am emotionally and energetically.
Not
right?
for any of us, right?
And so Instagram for me used to be like this place where I would put pictures. It was like my virtual photo books because who the hell has photo books anymore?
Right.
And then it was like, well, this is a marketing platform, so I should be marketing. And so then you start doing marketing on there and you're like, oh, this kind of tainted what I was using it for. And do I really even want to be marketing? But, and then it's like, well, how do I, these are the thoughts I have. Well, how do you expand your reach if you are just not on a platform? And so I don't know what the answer is. I don't love using it as a platform for advertising. I don't love that. Like, I want to just put pictures of my kids playing baseball and soccer and, pictures of them jumping off of my mom and dad's boat or something,
I get it.
And, pictures of us just enjoying our time together. That feels authentic to me. But I mean, it's in some ways it feels like a little bit of a necessary evil these days. It used to be like, oh, you'd have a web page, right? And now it's like, what do you need that for?
So I have an ericmckenna.com. I've always had the domain, and it's evolved over time. And I got a pretty simplistic, but I'm very happy with it. Website developed. I'm happy with it. And I don't promote it though. It's there, and I send people to it
just to see.
And you look at it, and some months there's like 1,000 people coming, and some months there's like 10.
Yeah.
It's like, so what am I doing? But it's almost like you said, if you're in business in a certain type of industry, you're almost required to have a footprint there.
Yeah.
It's almost like an online resume all the time.
Yeah. I was talking to this woman who's like one of my best friends, and she and I today were like talking about something and just sort of like commiserating. And I said to her, I was like, I just want to build shit. Like, I just want to build stuff. Like, that's it. Like, I really just want to build stuff, like not virtual stuff, like stuff in the real world. Like,
yeah. Physical.
Yeah. I want to build tables. I want to build tiny houses. I want to build these things, right? I want my children to be involved in it. That's like how I grew up. And that was invaluable. Like learning how to swing a hammer, like invaluable. And I don't know that, like, I see some friends who are in like construction or contractors or whatever, and I see them doing that. But like, I don't think that that's the majority.
No, and there's also something really spiritually good about physical labor.
Well,
don't you think?
Well, yeah, but I also think that in some ways it keeps you connected to creation, and I think that's ultimately what we want to be a part of. Whether it's like, Like if you're like a woman and you want to have children, or a man and you want to have children, whatever, or any gender in between, actually, speaking of all of that. If you're a person who wants to have children, that's amazing. That's a creation process. If you want to create music or art or conversation, right? That's like beautiful.
100%.
I think we just want to be involved in creation in some way.
That's a great way of putting it. That's a great statement, because I agree wholeheartly.
I mean, I think that's it. And like, for me, like, I feel like my two worlds, not the virtual world, because that's not a world. That's just a domain.
Sing it, soul sister.
But for me, like, I've got these two worlds. One is like the very physical world, and one is the very sort of esoteric spiritual world. And I have difficulty enough walking between these two worlds. And I'm like, sometimes I spend a little more time over here in the esoteric, and sometimes I spend a little more time over here in the physical. And when I get too much in the physical, I'm like, oh, like I'm forgetting the infinite purpose of all of my things, right? I'm forgetting the I amness, right? And I'm just focused on this like thing. But like, I think that, doing things in this beautiful vehicle and this body that we have it's like such a blessing and such a gift. And to be able to take care of it, like you said, in the pandemic, you were like, oh yeah, I was able, I got to fix myself. I got to lose weight. I got to get more healthy. I got internally and externally, just like you became more aligned, right?
No question.
And that was like a creation process for you. And that was
one of the things that, when we talked last time, you were here, I left that going, not that I felt compelled to fix it immediately, but I knew I was not in alignment at all.
Yeah, I knew that too. You told me. we were talking, and you said some things, and I was like,
yeah. But
we figure it out. So what changed for you?
What do you mean?
Well, what do you mean? What do I mean? What ended up shifting for you?
What ended up shifting for me was I had a fantastic 2018 and 19 in business. Fantastic. The podcast in 19 started. I was having a blast. Yeah. And then it all stopped. Like the pandemic put a stop to the business part of it. And the podcast was still there, but I was thinking to myself, well, I can't really be in the same room with people. Even if they want to be, optics don't look good. And I said, I got to take a break. And I looked in the mirror. I didn't like what I saw. But it wasn't the physical thing. I didn't like the physical thing either. I'll share, I was 242. And my frame just can't handle 242. And I'm 178 as I sit here now. So I've lost a shit ton of weight. And I did it because, yes, it was good to see the visual of it reducing, but I knew that overweight body was a deeper reflection of like my discontentment. I could feel it. I could feel it. And that discontentment went to everything. Yeah. Relationships with friends I've missed because I worked too hard. Having this project, but really not defining it. I didn't know what the hell I was actually doing it for. I knew why I wanted to start it, but I didn't know why I was at. So everything just kind of like, I took some time for myself to put a plan together and just do a lot of thinking. And I had not sat and pondered, Jennifer, for like a long time. And then I started like going on these long walks, and they became cathartic. And I took them there. First they were half an hour, then they were an hour, then they were an hour and a half. But during that time, all these things got massaged, and I started figuring things out. It was the time I needed for myself, which I wouldn't take prior. No. Because there was no time for that. No. Who needs time for that, right?
Well, and
life's great.
And can I just say that, like, so much of like my interest in, whatever interests I have, so like spiritual stuff, like, how we navigate the world and through transformation kind of stuff, and mindfulness stuff, like when I look at that, I just start to think, and I think I'm maybe in the minority. I mean, my brain goes into wild places. Right. Like this week I was considering what would happen if we didn't have a name and we were just like like a musical melody when we walked in.
You mean like Prince?
Well, yeah, I mean, but like not contrived. It was like we really didn't even have a symbol. Like it was just like some tone. Like what if you just walked in and you were just like a frequency? It was like,
So what'd you be?
I don't know.
I'd be, oh. I wouldn't be a high note. I'd be, oh.
So I was with a friend, and she was like, "Here's what mine would be," and it was like some like tinkly little thing, and I was like, "Oh, that's great." I think I would probably be I'd be like some solfeggio frequency or something, right? It would just be like, but anyway, so welcome to my brain, Eric. So yeah, I just start to think about why we do what we do, and kind of getting back to kind of where we began. You know, we do so much of what we do for other people,
no doubt,
and we don't do what we need to do for ourselves,
no doubt,
and we don't set the appropriate boundaries, and we don't feel our personal power. We don't feel the imprint that we leave in the world. We don't feel these things because it's so loud and it's so bright, and we lose our purpose.
Yes.
We start focusing on shit that doesn't matter.
100%.
And like when we are working ourselves to death, what are we working for? Are we working for to get to retirement so that we can enjoy our life? What the hell is that? I mean, honestly, what is that? Like, that is wasting your entire life to get to this point where you're like, oh, now I can live. No, I want to live now. I want to enjoy my life. And like, I mean, that really became super apparent to me before the pandemic, but also, and it's been apparent for me for a lot of years, but like it really became prominent in the pandemic. So I think your story is not unique in that, like, you know, there are a lot of people who went the opposite direction. And of course, this is all on a continuum, but like, you know, there are a lot of people who really focused and kind of hunkered down on like what it is that they wanted to do.
I've talked to a lot of them, and but I've also talked to some who went the other way and just used it as and again, they had their look. Maybe they needed that time to touch. Maybe that was the time they needed to decompress. I don't knock anybody. I don't think it's the wisest thing to get drunk every day at 10 a.m. I don't think that's the wisest thing to do. Not judging, but I'm saying that might not have been the best decision to make. But ultimately, maybe they needed that time to decompress.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, and I think that, like, you know, everything we do kind of, I love this idea of like a grand plan, right? Everything kind of unfolds as it needs to. And sometimes we're just, I kind of love this idea. I'm using it a lot for myself. But like this idea that, like, you know, a cruise ship, it takes miles to make a turn. Right? Like it takes a lot to turn a cruise ship, or like a tugboat pushing barges, right?
Okay.
It takes forever. And so sometimes we're in the midst of the turn and we're just like, we're not at the final destination. We're not where we were, but like, we're just like in the turn.
I like that.
And we have to have these experiences to get us to where we are. And like for me personally, you know, I had to own multiple yoga studios. I had to own the dog stop. I had to own a loom. I had to do all of these things. That was a necessity for my book of life. That was like a necessity for me to learn what I needed to learn to get to this point in order to kind of grow and be live a little deeper with more conviction.
When you hear people say, I need to be more intentional in my life, because I think that phrase seems to be tossed around a lot. What does living intentionally actually mean?
Well, my first response in my brain is like, well, do it. It takes like one tiny little thing to live with more intention, right? So maybe that's like getting up and like noticing your breath every day for a minute. It doesn't even have to be long. Just consistency. You just turn it into a habit, right? So like that's kind of where my brain goes first. Okay. But you know, I think that that's different for everybody. I think you know, you can live with intention to be a better mom or a better wife or a better husband or partner or friend or brother or father or whatever. But again, it kind of gets you back into those labels.
It does.
So
yeah.
In that way, but like also, you know, are you going to live with intention? Like, so what is the intention, right? What's the, it's not a resolution. What's the intention that you're setting for the day? Like, is it to be more mindful? Is it to be, you know, a kinder person?
Mm-hmm.
Is it to have a more open heart? Is it to be closed off? I mean, it could go either way, right? So,
yeah.
So, I mean, I guess my question would be, well, how do you want to live with intention? How do you want to live with intention, Eric?
I want to recognize that we only have a finite amount of time here, and that's something different because I didn't feel that way years. I didn't think about time.
No.
I'm 57. I think about time now.
Yeah.
I do. And I just want to make sure that when at all possible, I am spending my time doing the things that I truly want to be doing. When at all possible, knowing that you can't spend every moment doing what you want, but the time available, I want to do that.
Right. And so there's like a level of like...
There's a little selfishness in that too, but I don't care.
No, actually, no.
You don't think?
No. I think selfishness gets a bad rap.
Okay. Let's talk about that.
I really think that like, you know, I come back to the like flight example all the time, like this, like, you know, like if you're going down, right? The oxygen masks come down. You have to put yours on first in order to be able to help others.
Yeah, for sure.
Period. And that goes in all of life.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take care of you. You have to be, you have to engage in self-care. And anybody who tells you that that's selfish actually doesn't have a grasp on what that truly is. Anyone who says that like you taking care of you is selfish, they are people who are not taking care of themselves. It's a reflection. It's like like they're just seeing they're seeing you through the lens of themselves.
Yeah, there's a business philosopher named Jim Rohn, and I got a lot of his material and it made sense to me. But when I was young, he had one of his things he said I never really understood. He used to say, you know, people say, "I'll take care of you and you take care of me." And Rohn would always say, no, I want you to take care of you for me. I'll take care of me for you. Yeah,
I love that.
And I didn't get it until later. And then I'm like, I'm starting to understand what he was saying.
Yeah.
You know, this was something he said probably 50, 70 years ago.
I mean, you can't be like, you know, even though you have adult children, like, you know, you can't be the best dad you can be unless you're taking care of you. You can't, I 100%. Can't be a good mom.
100%.
I can't be present and mindful and like really, truly present for my children unless I'm taking care of me. There are certainly times in life where that is an absolute luxury.
Certainly.
But there are little things that we can do along the way that allow us to like, you know, be more present. Yeah. And to find that level of self-care. I'm like a huge proponent of self-care. Like you can't take care of yourself too much.
See, I would agree with you. There's people that don't believe that.
Well, though. I would also say that maybe the question might be too, like if somebody's engaging in self-care to the detriment of their relationship to somebody else or something else, then they're actually not engaging in self-care. They're actually engaging in self-sabotage.
I would think.
So
it's a fine line.
So there,
it can be.
But also like I kind of think too about this is a dumb example, but like women who and men who, or just anybody, any human who engages in like a lot of like plastic surgery or that kind of thing, where it's like self-care and it's actually like there's a fine line there.
Something
like
else is going on.
Yeah, right. So you have to look at the motivation. Is the motivation external or internal? Maybe that's something that we should sit with, right? Like, is it an internal control, like motivation, or is it an external motivation? The external motivation always has some type of a response that needs to be elicited in order to like engage with it. internal you do for you, right?
So I'm guessing you're pretty read on, obviously, philosophy to some degree.
Some,
right?
yeah. I mean, I'm
young, right? Young's a...
Yeah, of course. Like, yeah, of course. I mean, of course. Like, you've been doing your researcher.
Yeah, of course I have. Because you're certainly well more read in that subject than me. I'm a casual observer of philosophy, Socrates, and all that. But I liked the band Rush when I was a kid, and the lyricist Neil Peart turned me on to Ayn Rand, who I was immediately labeled as some kind of right-wing nut by reading that stuff. And I don't know if the right wing of the country adopted that, but nothing that she really expounds is really right wing. I had a little book given to me called The Virtue of Selfishness. You're familiar with it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't spent any time reading it.
And as a kid
but,
reading
I know
that, it was like, wow, she's actually saying it's okay to figure myself out and to be as industrious as I can be because it benefits the greater good without causing harm to others.
Right.
I thought it was an easy concept to grasp, but man, the vitriol I got from like showing people I was reading that book was unbelievable. But I got what I needed out of that.
Is it vitriol because it's perceived vitriol and people haven't actually read it?
No question, 100%. Because the title, I'm guessing, or the name of the author,
or they know a little something about it, but don't really know the depth of it.
Yeah, but it made a lot of sense to me, like that. And that was against. And I was raised Catholic by a very strong Catholic, thing. We're very guilt-driven religion. That's what it is. My experience, anyways. And it went definitely against the tenets of Catholicism, but it just made sense to me, a more pragmatic way to live my life. And I'll never forget that I was probably 10 years old reading this little paperback book in my room because I was turned on by a lyric in a song.
Yeah, right?
Crazy. But those things helped. Here I am 50 years later.
You remember that.
Talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of musicians who really have influenced generations in that positive kind of way. Like I think so much about like a lot of like the hardcore and punk scene, like I mean never mind the bollocks, right?
Johnny's my man.
You literally like where would we be without that, right? And even too, like, I mean, you want to get more current, more pop culture, like even thinking about, like you got like Social Distortion on one end, and then you've got these rappers, right? Like Pharaoh Monch and all of those people were rapping about historical things that instigated inquiry with the people who were listening to the music. I mean, it's incredible.
I know, and I think it's interesting that there's so much content and potential fascination with the lyrical side of all popular music. Just to talk about popular music, there's so much there. We tend to not indulge, so we're only getting half of the experience as initially created by the artist. Because we're just taking the music out of it and what it does to us. But that lyrical part is a big thing.
It's funny. I used to be a person who was like very much about the feel of the music, like the resonance and how it made me feel. It wasn't necessarily about the lyrics. I mean, of course I was like interested in lyrics, but not like I am now.
When you marry the two.
I married.
No, when you marry an interest of lyrical content.
I was gonna say, oh, Chad, my. I was like, yes, that is one of the things that he is one of the people who inspired me to actually take more heed and listen. And so that's like, it's so interesting because he comes from a hip hop world and like that is like such an important thing for him. And now like something keeps resonating for me, like thinking about it, but like, I don't know if you've listened to it, but if you've listened to Megan Thee Stallion's like newest album.
No, not yet.
It's like the whole album is like incredible, talking about like depression and anxiety. And like, actually my kids are, for better or worse, like repeating lyrics to me, not so much about like, you know, sexual escapades, but like, you know, like whenever one of them is having a bad day, I'll like throw on like the song Anxiety, and it's like it talks about bad bitches having bad days too, you know, like, and I think like, yeah, like that's it. Like and so, you know, you just have to
but then the artist, like the thing that's great thing about music is like, and maybe it's just I was lucky that I had the era that I grew up in, and I had family that were musicians. So I was really told to immerse myself in the album, read the album sleeves, you know, immerse yourself in the whole.
Do you remember that? You remember
best ever.
like opening
best ever.
Opening like
I
records or like
what they smelled like. You know,
the paper.
And eventually they started smelling like weed because you taking them to all your parties. And they would acquire that weed smell. But when you ever knew out of the plastic, it just had that smell. You know.
Yes. And you'd be reading the lyrics along with it.
But I think that I don't think that happens today.
Well, I do think it does, because you can read the lyrics. Like my kids, they will read the lyrics on Apple Music, on Spotify. Maybe. I don't know, because like if you're really into music, I mean, it is, I mean, they come from, you know, a musical family, but like, you know, if you're really into that, then that's something. I remember, this is so funny. I remember sticking tapes into the cassette recorder and recording like songs off of the radio. And then I would just like repeat like lyrically, like I would like write down all the lyrics so that I could remember them.
I did the same thing. And then you had some artists.
Like if I said that to my kids, they'd be like, what the hell?
Oh yeah, it's so archaic. I know,
but it's like so great. It was like such a piece of our childhood.
We had less inputs, so we didn't have a lot of distractions.
No.
So that was like, we were fascinated by it. The fascination was and in the rock scene, you know. And then I grew up on Elton John, all of them, and you would hear these songs, but because it wasn't my music, I just guessed he was saying these words, and all my life I'm like, wait, he wasn't saying that, right? Was he? Because music that you knew but weren't really interested in, you wouldn't investigate the lyrics. You just assume they are what they are, and then you find out years later that's not what he's saying. But if you're like,
oh shit, I've been saying that wrong all those years.
Because the English accent, especially like this, that's not what he's saying. He's not talking about pink elephants. He's talking about like go around the bend of the store, and it's like it just. But when you really found something you resonated with, the thing to do when we were kids was just like absorb every ounce you could, especially bands that made you think on the rock front. I mean, Kiss was like, we knew what they were singing about. I get it. You liked it. But a Rush or a band like Yes or Pink Floyd, you'd read this stuff. You know? Like
2 weeks ago, whatever it was, my kids and I were on our way to, my sister threw this really adorable, like, surprise birthday brunch for my 13-year-old niece. And so we're on our way up there, and I was just like, I need to listen to Led Zeppelin right now.
You get in that mode,
right?
I
literally made my children listen to Led Zeppelin. Oh, yeah. And I was like, I'll just put it on shuffle. And it was like the whole way there. And I was like, when I pulled in, I was like, damn, I forgot how fucking great they are. Like, I forgot. And then I was like, oh, I should listen to like other stuff that I haven't listened to in a long time. So I was listening to Pink Floyd, and then I was like, I feel a little weird listening to Pink Floyd since Roger Waters is going off the deep end a little.
Yeah,
and then,
he's out there right now.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, we should listen to AC/DC. And my kids were like, what is this? It's like some good shit.
Some good shit, yeah. It's like, and we know it's out there, but we again, being intentional, right?
Yeah.
And you're going, why don't I intentionally go out and seek out to play this and immerse myself in it again?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the moment calls for it. When the moment calls for it, and it was like something about a beautiful Sunday drive in the morning. I was like, let's get our juices pumping while I drink my coffee. Yeah, I don't know. I was like, my kids were like, this is actually pretty good, and I was like, I know, we should listen to this more. So
it's just, I find it crazy. That music thing is so interesting. Like I feel it's disposable now to the generations below us, because they don't pay for it. Generally, it's kind of like out there. It's not a tangible thing. They're not going to go buy an album at National Record Mart to have a tangible. They don't ingest their media in a tangible way now. It's in the ether, and they just.
Yeah, but I think the most incredible part, like let's look at the positive of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the most incredible part about the way that we have access to music now is that like I can hear a band that is from like Germany that I would have never heard, or like, like Singapore or something, some, place that I would have never been able to hear this person. And sometimes it just takes like, throwing on Pandora or like, or like doing a Spotify playlist that is like somebody that I respect and like, or whatever. Or maybe not even. Maybe it's like play something like this. Apple Music kind of does a thing where if you play one song, it'll start playing songs that are sort of in a similar vein. And then you end up like in a rabbit hole of like,
AI is something,
what is this? Yeah, it is, and like, I'm continually just in awe of like all of the access to all of the things. And yes, it's a lot of input as we've been saying,
but you can do it intentionally.
Yeah, there you
by
go.
Choosing.
There you go.
Didn't we use the web that way in the beginning? You would go to Google because you were interested in a subject and you'd research it.
Or Napster.
Or anything.
Like literally, I remember like downloading MP3s, but like, and I think about how far the internet has come, and thinking about, even just like 15 years ago when I'd be like looking for an answer to something, right? I'd still go to the library. I'd still look at the books. And I still do that because I love being able to hold a book. 100%. I love being able to read an original source, right? And but the thing is that like the questions that I had, like even like this is really kind of stupid. Like I had so many questions about yoga whenever like 25 years ago. And, I like, where do you find those answers other than just like going to the library and getting a book? So you'd look for it through your little AOL search bar or whatever.
Web crawler.
I can still hear the dial up.
Oh God.
But like you'd go and look for answers, and now it's just like available. And like, how cool is that? Like, cool?
Do we take that for granted? Do a portion of our society take that for granted?
Oh yeah, I mean, like most people can't navigate places because we use Waze or Google Maps or something. Garmin, whatever we do, but like, I mean, there was like something really beautiful about getting lost. You filled in a whole part of your cognitive map. So it's wild.
Remember you leave the house when you first got your license and your parents didn't know where you were going.
Yeah, well, you had no cell phone. I actually, listen, this is hilarious. I was, my kids were getting into Chad's car, and he had like a book of road maps. I was like, who the fuck has this in their car?
They're called triptychs or something.
Yeah,
like,
but I was like,
AAA?
it was like an atlas. Like it was an atlas, like spiral bound. Like
AAA had this. You flip them over and they would be
sure, yeah. But like this was like of the entire every state, and you could like see. And I said to the boys, I was like, you guys will never know the crazy joy of figuring out how to get somewhere with a map.
And you'd get there, and you're like, I did it.
You'd highlight the route with like a highlighter.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh my God. Like, I remember like, just even going to grad school, like I would go back and I went to Bucknell, and I would go back and forth. And every time I would go, I would take a different route. But like, I would know that route. And it was highlighted on my fucking map. Like it's a wild thing, and it's like something that's so like we totally take these like things for granted,
We have a great frame of reference, though. We remember the before times. Like I
Yeah.
said, the before times are like 95 before.
Oh, yeah.
And the web starts launching in 95, 96, and then it all ushered in technology. But the before times were great.
Yeah, it was just a different thing. You know, Chad and I frequently talk about our kids and how, like, you know, they're not going out and making their own fun, right? Like they're not going out and just being creative and, you know, having to like find sticks and bang on trees and do whatever the hell you do as a kid, right? They're not getting dirty. They're not doing any of this stuff. And it's a different mindset. And so, like, you know, like when during the pandemic, we would go on these little hikes and I'd be like, let's go find some crayfish in a creek. And my middle kid, if I have a middle kid, I have twins, right? But my middle kid would be like, ugh, I don't want to get dirty. He's changed his tune now. He loves going in nature.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, so
Right
it's
on.
like
You
he's
did
changed
good
his
then.
tune. Yeah, I
You
did.
did
So
good.
I don't know if I did it, but like it just happened. So yeah, like I would take them, you know, even just to like Shenley Park or Frick Park, and we'd walk around, and they're like, can we do that again? I'm like, yeah. Can we look at the trees? I'm like, yeah. Let's look at the trees. My oldest is like, yeah, whatever. I'm not into it.
Yeah, that camping thing burned me out when I was a kid. Did so much of it. That was our
we did
vacations
it
every
too,
year.
yeah.
They couldn't afford vacations, so that's what we did.
Yeah.
And I decided, like,
I'm never doing that again.
Someone told me when I think I was 18 or 19, got my first apartment, and someone goes, listen, man, I'll tell you something. If your friend comes over and says, hey, let's go camp for the weekend, you need to get some new friends. And I went, what do you mean? He goes, oh, there's a whole nother life besides camping, pal. Wait till you go to a hotel on the beach, you're going to lose your mind. That's vacation. And it's not got a taste of like a real vacation. I'm like, oh, this is how the other half lives. I got a TV and a bed, and there's the ocean. I like this better.
Yeah.
Picking ticks off my arm.
Yeah,
and,
that's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. We grew up camping too, but I really appreciated it. Like
back then I did.
I loved it.
Do you like it now?
I mean, I don't go enough because I'm just busy doing other things.
Would you go?
Yeah.
Really?
I think I'd go.
Oh, man.
You know what I loved? So my mom and dad like live on the river. They've got like a lot of acreage, a lot of acreage. And when we were little, like it was like our weekend place. So we would go there on the weekends or in this basically all summer.
Sure.
And I would have friends over and I'd be like, let's camp in the tent. We had this enormous tent, right? It could probably hold like 8 or 10 people.
Okay.
And we would deck it out. We would like decorate it. It would be like my like love for tiny houses probably stems from these tents.
Probably.
But it's not like something that I seek out, but I could probably get into it. I do love a bougie hotel though. I'm not gonna lie.
Hard. Well, who doesn't, right?
Yeah, adult money.
I mean,
right?
It's adult money. Before we wrap this up, my love, I want to ask you. We're making a right turn here, but I probably should have put this at the beginning of the show.
You know what?
I want to ask you this question: do you think we're losing the capacity within society to forgive?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
I knew it. You knew there had to be another one in there, right?
Yeah, I love it. So I'm one. I don't know. I don't know. I think that in some ways, because we are inundated with all of these inputs that can be positive, I'd like to think that we can move in a direction that allows us to heal ourselves enough that we can engage with somebody who, did wrong by us. Mm-hmm. I really believe in that. And also, I believe that we now have the capacity and the ability to set strong boundaries. So maybe it's not necessarily a need for forgiveness, but just a need to cut them out. Like sometimes we just have to, make decisions that are in our best self-interests, in the best self-interests of our families or, groups, communities, where we just have to, say, you know what, I've learned a lot, and, Godspeed, see you later. And, I think we have the ability to perseverate on things, to obsess, and to, create more anxiety. And for me, I'd like to think that we're headed in a better direction, where we can actually find tools easier to make ourselves, to allow ourselves to live in a better way, in a way that's, just more, more authentic and more honest. And forgiveness is interesting, right? Because in some ways, I personally believe that there aren't bad people. There are people who have had experiences in their lives that have led them to make decisions that aren't in their best interest, or aren't in the best interest of those around them. I like to think that that's the case.
I would agree.
And I think that, there's a lot of research, social psychology and social work research that indicates that.
Okay.
That, people aren't bad. They just have trauma, and they act out of the trauma, or they act out of the triggers or insecurities or whatever. And so I think that, with that frame of reference, anybody can be forgiven, but there are some people who take actions in this world that aren't necessarily forgivable.
Mm-hmm. Oh, certainly.
And I think that
certainly.
I think there's a way that the person who's the victim of whatever the transgression is, that it's up to them to choose. And I don't think that there should be pressure for forgiveness in any realm. But I do think that a lot of times we need to take into light the bigger picture. Now, there are certainly acts that are just inexcusable, absolutely
they don't
awful.
Warrant forgiveness, right?
Yeah, they don't warrant forgiveness. They don't warrant anything other than a strong boundary. Mm-hmm. And the gift of the trauma, or the gift of the transgression is you grow from it. You can grow from it. You have the option of, moving into a space where, you can choose how you engage with it. And unfortunately for some people, there are things that ruin their lives, right?
Certainly.
And then for others, I have a very, very good friend who is a former client, and she's gone through some really terrible, terrible things. And I look at where she is and how she is just embracing the healing and what it's offering to her. And it's offering to her a new lens for self-care, right? Mm-hmm. And that means just cutting people out.
Yeah, I think it can be very healthy. I also think, too, maybe that there's not enough maybe understanding of the idea that forgiveness doesn't have to be for the benefit of the other person. It's really, don't you kind of do it for yourself, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, you think. But it's almost like resentments, right? Resentments are, my very good friend, or my friend who's a Hare Krishna, he often talks about resentment and how it's like a poison that I feed myself because in spite of you. And so I think about that too in terms of forgiveness, right? You can recognize that people deserve goodness in life, and you can also say, you deserve goodness, but you deserve goodness over there.
From a distance,
you don't need to be in my immediate circle.
From a distance, yeah.
Yeah.
And I, like you said, I think that goes back to the concept of self-care. That's part of self-care.
Well, and too, the other piece of this that I kind of think about is when you grow up in a dogmatic religion, right? Something specifically like Catholicism, where there's there's a reason for Catholic guilt, right? Because
No
there's a
doubt.
lot of shaming.
No doubt.
And I'm not saying anything against Catholicism. Like, I think it's actually quite a beautiful practice. It's done some not so good things to lots of people. But like, as a practice, like Christianity in general is like a really beautiful thing. But like, you know, when you're told that you always have to work towards forgiveness, no, you don't. It's a little bit like the kids, right? No, you don't have to go say hi to them. If you don't want to, that's okay. We don't need to override our intuition as a courtesy to others. That is just not the way you need to operate. And so I think forgiveness is a lot like that. I also think that like we get attached to the outcome of forgiveness, kind of piggybacking onto where you were kind of going with that. Like I think we get totally immersed in this idea that like, you know, we have to forgive. And once we forgive, like X will happen.
It's almost like part of the transaction.
It's totally transaction. It's codependency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think you're right. So, yeah, but anyway, this has been really lovely.
This needs to happen like on a regular basis.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm putting it on. See, it's now. So she says, "Yeah, I'm going to do it," and then she doesn't do it. Then
no, I'm in. I told you beforehand. I'm like, whatever you want.
I need your participation in some of these panel shows.
I love it. I'm into it.
You all right with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm totally into it. It is now solidified in the ether.
It's in the ether. That's right.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you texted me.
This means a lot to me that you came back. You were show 10 and now you're show 345.
What? I like these like numbers and 5s and 10s. Like, yes. Give me all the 5s and 10s.
Thank you, my love. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll do this
Thanks for having me.
We'll do this again. And they can reach you. I mean, what's the easiest way to contact you?
Oh, yeah. You can go to my website, which is abovetobelow.com. I'm revamping the website, so I have to do some work on it tonight.
Above the Below. You can reach her on Facebook.
Facebook.
Above Two Below. Excuse me.
Abovetobelow.com. And and you know, where you can just email me, Google me.
Google, Facebook, Instagram.
The LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. I found you on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn presence is bad.
Yeah, I'm just really not good with these things in general, but.
Well, it's for the youngins, right?
Yeah. You can also email me. What's that? That's archaic.
Yeah. What's your email?
Jennifer@abovetobelow.com or abovetobelow.coaching.com.
Abovetobelow.coaching.com.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
We'll do this again.
Yeah.
All right,
soon.
We're out. See ya.